Welcome back to the Woven Well podcast. As someone who teaches a method of natural family planning, I have long heard the conversation around libido being naturally higher around the time of ovulation. This is just something that I hear people say all the time. For the record, I've read studies showing how varied that answer actually is as to when women feel the most libido during their reproductive cycles. But a few weeks ago, I saw Ellen Holloway, a Catholic sexuality and intimacy coach, share about what crashing libido after ovulation really points to. And I had to have her on. That is so fascinating. So, Ellen has a certificate in the fundamentals of sex therapy and is currently pursuing her master's degree in theology of the body. In addition to being an intimacy coach for Catholic couples, she's also the host of the podcast Reclaiming Catholic Intimacy. Ellen, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me,
Before we jump into the questions about libido,
which I'm so excited to talk about, by the
me
way.
too. Me too. I'm just like, I know people are going to be interested in this, but I also think that our listeners are going to love to hear a little bit more about what it is that you do as a sexuality and intimacy coach that may be new terminology for them.
Absolutely. So, when I first got married, our marriage honestly started off at like rock bottom because we had no understanding of really what sex is from a like soul level perspective. We didn't understand how beautiful and amazing it was. And also, just we didn't understand any of the practicals of it. My husband and I were both virgins when we first got married. And so we had to like spend years and years and years not only learning that sex is really good and beautiful. There's a lot of purity culture influence on both of us of just like this is something that's bad and dirty, but like that it's something that is designed by God and given to us as something to help our marriages flourish and be amazing and also image God, which maybe that's a topic for another podcast episode. But also just the practicals of like how do we achieve orgasm?
Hmm.
Where did my desire for sex go? I had a lot when we first got married and now I don't. Like these really practical questions, we had nowhere to turn to that felt like an appropriate place to turn to, right? There were secular resources and things like that, and nothing was really clicking for us and nothing felt comfortable. So that's when I really dove into and realized that there was this gaping hole in practical sex education for married women. And that is what I do.
I love that. We all need those safe places where we can go to ask questions, not worry about judgment, and also know that the answers we're going to receive, the guidance we're going to receive is going to be safe too. It's going to be trustworthy
Yes.
as well. Now, our listeners are made up of a diverse background, lots of different Christian traditions, and some who may just be exploring the Christian faith. So, could you talk to us a little bit about why your work is directed towards Catholics specifically and whether or not it applies to all Christians in addition?
Well, it definitely applies to all Christians, but I am really firmly rooted in the Catholic space for two really big reasons. One is that there really isn't anyone directly speaking to Catholic wives in this space. There are some Christian speakers out there who are doing work in the sex and intimacy space, but there was no one really speaking into the Catholic space. And I myself, as a Catholic, really saw a need for that. But then from a further perspective, one of the things I work a lot in helping women really understand the fullness of sex and intimacy. And the Catholic Church holds this fullness of sex and intimacy with the unitive and procreative aspects of sex need to be present in every instance of sex because that is the natural design of it. And this is not a quote Catholic teaching. This is a human teaching. This is a matter of natural design. And so I speak from that perspective of a natural design. So that absolutely applies to everyone, not just Christians. Like that applies to everyone. And gosh, if I could reach every single married woman who was Catholic, Christian, like, no
Fill in the blank.
religion, I would. I totally would. Right.
Yeah, and I love that you brought it even bigger than the Christian tradition in and of itself. Like, this is a human thing. Every single
Yes.
human deserves to have this information and benefits from this information, knowing what it really is, what it really means, and what it's capable of doing in our lives. We completely agree here. You know, we talk all the time on this podcast about how we are mind, body, and spirit, all created by God to image God into the world. And so this is an important part of how we do that. It can't be separated or ignored. And so it matters, which is why
Absolutely.
conversations around something like libido also matter, you know?
Yes.
That's right. So give us the scoop on libido for a woman. I mean, I think most women know the word and they know maybe what it feels like personally, but they may not be sure what's normal or how it actually works. So kind of just help us understand a little bit.
So first off, I absolutely despise the word libido
Okay.
because it was a made up word by Sigmund Freud. And actually what Freud meant by the word is different than what we use today to mean libido. So it's a very undefined term and it doesn't really make sense, which you kind of proved the point there where it's like most women don't really know what it means. So I like to use sexual desire. I think that that's super clear and you can figure what desire for sex, sexual desire
Yes.
means. So, sexual desire is influenced by testosterone. In men and women, it is influenced by testosterone. Testosterone is the guiding factor in sexual desire. Testosterone for a woman largely doesn't change throughout her cycle. Like it may have tiny incremental changes in a 24-hour period. And this is similar to a man. Like men have a little bit higher testosterone in the morning, a little bit lower in the evening. Same goes for women, but we're kind of on this smaller scale of testosterone. Women don't need very much testosterone. Sexual desire for women, it really just needs this teeny little teaspoon of testosterone and you've got it. And also, just side note, supplementing testosterone for women does not work clinically. If your doctor is telling you to do it, don't do it. It literally doesn't work. Okay, now
Good
back to
word.
the real
Good
matter.
word.
Just a little side note. A lot of women see this pattern throughout their cycle of kind of low desire for sex at the beginning. And then as estrogen increases and we get closer to ovulation, there's this desire for sex that shows up. And then as soon as ovulation happens, that desire for sex plummets. If this is the case, it is very important that you know that your body is in a stress state. It is not healthy and you should not be experiencing that. Now let's talk about why.
Yes.
Why we see that, because
Yeah.
it does exist. This is a common pattern for women, but we need to understand that this is not a normal pattern. It's common, but it's not how your body should be reacting.
Hmm.
Now, testosterone, like I said, stays largely the same throughout the cycle. What is happening is that your life is extremely stressful. And this is, probably everyone's life is extremely stressful. And so your body is in survival mode. And that's putting your energy level at a very, very low level. And so sexual desire needs energy. It cannot exist without energy. So if your energy level is so low, your sexual desire is like, oh, I don't have room. It's fine. It's fine. I'll take a back seat. Not a problem. Think about it this way. Sex is not a survival instinct for women. If you are being chased by a lion, you do not want to get pregnant. It's going to make it harder for you to run away from the lion. It's the opposite for men, right? If a man's being chased by a lion, he wants his line to continue. He wants to have children in case he dies, right? So when men are stressed, they often want more sex. When women are stressed, we want less because our body doesn't want to get pregnant because it's not safe, right? So then we look at the cycle. Estrogen is an upper. It tricks your body into thinking it has more energy than it does. That's just how estrogen works. So your body, when estrogen comes into play, gets tricked. Your brain gets tricked by this hormone. And it goes, oh, I have more energy. And so then sexual desire is like, oh, I have space. And sexual desire shows up. That's the normal level of sexual desire that we should always have. We're not getting sexual desire because it's somehow attached to estrogen. We're getting sexual desire because our brain thinks that there is suddenly enough energy to give some to sexual desire because estrogen told our brain that it has more energy than it actually does.
Mm.
Yeah, right?
Yes,
Fascinating.
fascinating. Absolutely fascinating and so important to discover and discuss because I hear all the time, especially ladies who are just considering potentially using a fertility awareness method or a form of natural family planning. And they're like, I don't think it's going to work for us because the only time I ever want to have sex with my husband is during the time of fertility and we're avoiding pregnancy. So this is never going to work for me. And there's always this feeling of, on my end, of, I don't know that it should be like that, but I don't
And it
necessarily want to
shouldn't.
say that because everyone is a little bit different. But when you know the hormonal, science behind it, it can help put into words what so many women are experiencing and they feel stuck. I think about how many women think, well, I need to be on birth control because that's the only way that I'll have any sexual desire at all. And yet, many times when women get on birth control, any sexual desire whatsoever plummets in and of
There are
itself.
some incredible studies that show that sexual desire plummets while on birth control, and then there are lasting effects after the
Mm.
hormonal birth control pill. So, sexual desire is not increased by any means by the pill. So, that's also a
And
fun fact to have.
we work from the perspective here at Woven Well and in Woven Natural Fertility Care behind the scenes. We work with the perspective of wanting to restore the female reproductive system and male, but we're focused on the female. Restore that to its full health if possible, right? Because women deserve that kind of great quality of life. Doesn't matter if she's trying to conceive or not, it's just about she deserves that kind of dignified, excellent care. And that applies so beautifully to sexual desire. Our bodies are communicating it. Our hormones are telling us it's not supposed to be like this. And not until we take a moment to listen to it, to acknowledge, recognize the fact that it is plummeting, that this doesn't feel normal. Why don't I ever want to be intimate with my spouse outside of ovulation? That we can start looking into these alternatives and really look at restoring that balance once again.
Right.
I'm thinking about for those who are listening, who's like, oh, what do I do? Because, like, that's me. That's me. It's always been me. Maybe we should start first with how can a woman tell if her sexual desire is healthy or if it needs support? Like, is it just the noticing it around ovulation and going away? Are there other things too that could apply to different populations?
Say like we get a little, I don't know, I feel like we get a little uppity about sexual desire and we expect our sexual desire to show up like it does in the movies, and that is not necessarily normal sexual desire. So
Yeah.
funnily enough, I would actually say that your sexual desire is probably completely fine. And it's not sexual desire that we need to be looking at. What we need to be looking at is the level of stress that is in your life and how you can just monitor that and mitigate that stress. So there's
Yes.
actually three things that I like require for my students to make sure that they have in place before they start coming to me going, I don't have any sexual desire, Ellen. I can't, there's just something wrong. Okay, we need to have these three things in place. Then, after you do this for 30 days, then you can talk to me about needing to do something else. Okay,
Love it.
the first one is sleep. If you are not getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep every single night,
Mm.
your body does not have room for sexual desire. Now, there's two ways that you can take this. You can go, okay, I need to prioritize sleep then. I got to get things off of my schedule. I got to make sure that I really do have that time to sleep. That's one way that you can manage it, and that's the one I recommend. The other way that you can manage it is go, "Oh, that's why I don't really have sexual desire. And I am choosing to do these other things in my life right now. Maybe I have this season where it's just not going to be easy to sleep, but I'm not going to try to blame my lack of sexual desire on anything else. I'm going to recognize I'm not getting enough sleep, and that is
Mm.
a problem."
Mm. Mm.
Now, the second thing is calories. If you are not eating enough calories and if you are not eating enough protein and healthy fats, your body, again, is in survival mode.
Yes.
Like if you are in a calorie deficit, let's say you're trying to lose weight and you want to be in a calorie deficit. That makes sense. But you need to also recognize your desire for sex is going to be low during
Mm.
this time because you are choosing to prioritize like losing weight over sexual desire. It's such an important thing to just recognize. Like, let's stop blaming lack of sexual desire on other things. Like, it actually has to do with ourselves and what's going on in our body and what's going on in our mind. We can take
Mhm.
responsibility for that. And then, but we also can recognize that there are seasons when it makes sense to prioritize certain things over sexual desire. Okay. And then the third thing is stress management. So I want you to like seriously look at your calendar. Do you need to be doing all the things on it? Like, are there things that you can change to give yourself more time? Are you watching the news? Because you probably should just stop. You probably should just stop watching and reading the news. Our bodies, our brains were not made
Yes.
for the 24-hour news cycle. We were not made to know things outside of our community.
Yeah.
We weren't. Like big, like historically big worldwide news that trickled to us 6 months later.
Mm.
You know, we didn't learn about these things instantly. Our brain is not prepared for that. And so we are in these like massive stress cycles with like, quote, how bad the world is. But guys, there was a time when 25% of the population killed another 25% of the population on Earth. And that was Cain and Abel, my friends, back in the very beginning. Okay. It's been bad. It's been bad since the fall. Like it's been this bad. This isn't new. It's just that we haven't typically had this much information at our fingertips. Managing stress is that third one.
Those are great. I love that that's the foundation that you want every woman to start on because it's so essential and it applies to so much other health stuff
Yeah.
in general, not just this, so many other things. And so I fully support all of that. So let's say we've got a listener who prioritizes all three of those things for 30 days, 60 days, whatever it may be, and nothing changes. At that point, what do you recommend?
Two things. One is figure out if you have responsive or spontaneous desire. And I've got podcast episodes on the Reclaiming Catholic Intimacy podcast on responsive and spontaneous desire. Because a lot of times we think that something is broken with our desire, but we actually just have responsive desire, which means that our desire grows out of direct stimuli. So you might just
Mm.
not randomly feel a desire for sex, and that's actually completely normal and healthy. And then
Mm.
the other thing is do a mindset check on how you think about sex.
Mm.
Do you have a lot of negative associations with sex? If you think, if I told you tonight you're going to go have sex with your husband, what goes on in your head? Are you excited? Are you looking forward to it? Do you get a
Mm.
pit in your stomach? Do you get all knotted up? And, where is your mindset with sex? And is it excited and positive and really looking forward to it? And then also let's make sure that sex is actually something that you enjoy, because you're never going to desire something that you don't get a benefit from. That's how our brains work, right? And so if you're
Mm.
not actually enjoying sex, if you're not experiencing pleasure, it's going to be pretty hard to desire that.
And with so many listeners who I know deal with vaginismus, pain, endometriosis, those sort of things, that can be an issue as well. And we're going
Absolutely.
to make sure to have links to several of these episodes in our show notes so that listeners can dive into even more information. But thank you so much for coming on, for sharing this big picture and introduction and encouragement that it doesn't have to be only sexual desire during ovulation and then nothing else the rest of the cycle. It's very encouraging.
Yes. Happy to be here.
Listeners, I hope that this episode has been helpful for you. Women are taught so little about things like this, but it makes such a difference to understand how your body works and what you can do to honor and care for it. And these are the kind of episodes that you can expect from us at Woven Well. Not always about sexual desire, but always resources for educating and empowering yourself when it comes to your cycles, your female body, and your natural fertility. Same goes for our book that released last month, Woven Well, A Christian Woman's Guide to Reproductive Health, Fertility, and Wholeness. Available now at your favorite online retailers and maybe even your local ones. Go check it out and see. Also, we'll make sure to have a link to Ellen's podcast in our show notes if you'd like to listen to more on her recommendations for reclaiming intimacy. As always, thanks for listening as we continue to explore together what it means to be woven well.